This week's episode of PokeClass is sponsored by Collector's Cash, your number one place to go for all your single cards and sealed products. Make sure you check them out after the show at www.collectorscash.com. Hey everyone, Dan here and welcome to episode 109 of PokeClass, where today we're looking at a hugely important deck for the next few months, Thundurus Deoxys. This deck has just been born through the release of Plasma Freeze, so it is a very new deck, but it has been in the works for a couple of months already. The deck has sheer speed, power and completely abuses the new Team Plasma cards, so with Nationals coming up very soon, what better deck to test either against or pilot yourself to get to those top tables. So here we go with another deck analysis, and we'll start off with the first Pokemon, which is Deoxys EX, as this guy is pretty much what powers this deck into the tier 1 status that it has already achieved. Deoxys is a Psychic type EX with the standard 180 HP, has Psychic weakness, 2 retreat cost, a single ability and just a single attack. The main feature of this card is the ability called Power Connect, and what it does is allow your Team Plasma Pokemon to deal 10 extra damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So it sounds interesting at first, as we know how much an extra 10 damage can help out in winning games, but the crazy fact about this is that the ability stacks. This means that if you have a maximum of 4 Deoxys sitting on your bench, you've got a massive extra 40 damage on top of all of your Team Plasma Pokemon's attacks. When you pair this with the likes of Hypnotoxic Laser and Verbank City Gym, you have a total of 70 damage being dealt without even taking into consideration how much damage your attack is doing. Laser has already changed the format in a big way thanks to this extra damage, but we can now add to that thanks to Deoxys. Deoxys' attack isn't bad either and is called Helix Force, and for the Psychic and Colorless energy you need to power it up, you get 30 base damage. However, when reading the small print, you will also notice that you get an extra 30 damage on top of that for each energy attached to the defending Pokemon if Deoxys has a Plasma energy attached. As mentioned in the small print for Deoxys' ability, you don't get the boosted damage from Deoxys' ability, but the extra damage you can be doing with this attack if you have a Plasma energy attached is very impressive. Of most importance, this very attack is going to be keeping Mewtwo EX in check all over the place, so maybe Mewtwo's reign over the format could possibly be nearing an end. Anyway, now that we know what keeps the power behind this deck, we also need that speed element and, more importantly, an attacker that can make the most of Deoxys' ability. Here enters Thundurus EX, another new card from the Plasma Freeze release, and he does have some impressive stats. Lightning typing with 170 HP, 10 lower than the standard EX, a single retreat cost and 2 attacks. The first attack, called Raiden Knuckle, for just a single lightning energy does 30 damage, but you also get to attach an energy card from your discard pile to one of your bench Team Plasma Pokemon. Now this is an attack that keeps the whole deck running. Since you're only going to be running on purely special energy with limited energy acceleration, this attack is perfect as it can get special energy back from the discard and attach energy while doing its first turn damage. 30 may not seem a lot at first, but when you factor in that you can have multiple Deoxys, Laser and Verbank at your disposal, you could be hitting for a massive 100 damage on just the first turn. Not only is this craziness, but it is possible with this deck every single round as you have so much speed and versatility to do so. Thundurus' second attack is also decent and is called Thunderous Noise and does 90 damage for 2 lightning and 2 colorless energy. This does sound like a steep cost, and I guess it is, but the effect of this attack is that if one of the energy used to power up this attack is a Plasma energy, you also get to discard an energy off of the defending Pokemon. Now this sounds like a small thing to do, but it can have huge effects on the results of games. Being able to take away energy from the opponent's side of the field that they weren't expecting has always proven deadly, as we've seen with Crushing Hammer. For this, while doing 90 plus damage is a really nice asset to have. It's just another thing that this deck can do and add to its arsenal. Now we can move on to the other attacker of the deck, and it's worth taking a look at as it is one beast of an attacker. This one is Kyurem, also from the Plasma Freeze set, and is a game winner, game changer and general beatstick of the deck. Currently we have Deoxys to power up our attacks and attack itself in desperate times, Thundurus to give massive early game pressure and accelerate energy, and then enters Kyurem with an all-round great set of attacks. The base stats of Kyurem are that it's a water-type Pokemon with 130 HP, a very nice number for a single prize Pokemon, and is also weak to metal, which is a huge plus when running this deck. It also has 2 attacks, the first being called Frost Spear for a water and a colorless, which does 30 damage and then 30 to another Pokemon on your opponent's bench of your choice. Obviously, this will remind you of the likes of Hammerhead from Landorus, and you would be correct, it is exactly the same, but it takes 1 more energy. Even though it does take that extra energy, however, you can still set this up on the first turn, thanks to Korra's machine. Where it really gets serious though is with Kyurem's second attack, Blizzard Burn, which does a whopping 120 damage for 2 water and a colourless. The downside is that Kyurem cannot attack the following turn, but this 120 damage paired with laser damage and extra damage from Deoxys is incredible for a single prized attacker. You can actually one-shot EXs with this thing, and the combo you need isn't that difficult to come by if you've got 3 Deoxys chilling on the bench. Overall, Kyurem is a beastly attacker that isn't an EX and shouldn't be underestimated in any stage of the game, be it with snipe damage from the get-go or big finishing moves. So now that you know the 3 vital elements that make this deck tick, you've got to admit that they are some very powerful cards. So now all we need is a very nice skeleton list to go with it, and luckily I've got one right here for you. The list is as always focused on straight consistency, so there won't be any tech cards in here yet, but that is what the extra space is for. So starting up the list, we've got our main players, Thundurus, Deoxys, and Kyurem. 3 Thundurus is all you're going to need to keep attacking, and 4 Deoxys is essential so that you have the maximum amount of firepower available at all times. 3 Kyurem may also seem a little bit high, but it is really such a good attacker that you should have this many if you can fit it in. The early game snipe is great for softening up big EXs for Thundurus, and the second attack can get the sweep on many times. If you don't like having 3, then 2 is still a great number, but I wouldn't go any less than that. There is a little space here for extra attackers, but I'll get to those after I've gone through the list so that you can see them in context with the rest of the cards. And this brings us onto our trainer cards, where as always we start with the classic 4 Juniper, 4 N and 4 Bianca. Bianca can again be switched out for Cheren if that's what you really want, but I feel that this deck burns through resources so quickly that Bianca is always going to be netting you at least 3 new cards anyway. We also have 2 new supporters in the form of Korres and Skylar, and this may seem like a high amount of supporters, but since we've got all the space, why not? Korres makes a lot of sense since you're going to be filling your bench with Deoxys, meaning you'll be drawing large amounts of cards, and Skylar aids you in the early game to get those donks by grabbing the trainers you need to either get energy or get extra damage. The supporter count is also nice and full, but not too high, and shouldn't be leaving you with too many dead hands anytime soon. Onto the item cards now, and we start with the standard 4 Pokemon Catcher, and then we move on to 3 Korres Machine. This card is obviously your second form of energy acceleration other than Thundurus, and keeps your attackers powered up throughout the game. The reason we're only playing 3 of this guy is because there are many occasions where you have your last plasma energy in hand, meaning you can't use it with Korres Machine, or it's already somewhere else on the board through manual attachment or in the discard. We then move on to 4 Switch, which is ideal for keeping your attacking options flexible every single turn, as Deoxys has a true retreat cost and Kyurem can't attack on consecutive turns after using Blizzard Burn. Even being able to switch into Thundurus and then retreat thanks to his single energy cost is a nice option when chaining Blizzard Burns. Next is the obvious 4 Laser and 2 Verbank, which is the minimum requirement for this deck, as it specialises in getting extra damage onto the board as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and this is one of the best ways to do so. Following this is one of the easiest cards to explain, and another from our new set, and that is Plasmaball. The card is simply your no downside search card for all the Pokemon in your deck. Search them out for free and get them out quickly. The last trainer card in this list is the one I'm not too sold on yet, which is the Ace Spec. If I had to play a tournament tomorrow with the deck, I would go for Scramble Switch, as this deck has such a strong early game already, with cheap attackers that deal huge damage, lessening the need for computer search. What Scramble Switch brings to the table is an out for the late game, where this deck tends to struggle a little bit sometimes to clinch that final prize, and the reason is because of energy. When losing an attacker in this deck, you lose a lot of energy that can only be reattached when attacking with Thundurus, not something you really want to be doing too much in the late game, as you'll be hitting for a smaller amount of damage. What Scramble Switch gives you is the option of accumulating all the energy that you have on your used attackers over the game, and putting it all into a final huge attack, which could ideally be used by Kyurem, swinging for massive damage. In theory, Scramble Switch works well, but computer search is still a nice choice for consistency too. And finally, we have the energy lineup, which does look very strange compared to what we're used to, as this deck runs purely off of special energy. Now, we haven't seen a deck that runs off of purely special energy for a crazy long time, or even ever, as it would seem like a bad idea since Enhanced Hammer is still around. However, the fact that Thundurus keeps your special energy circulating in play is the very reason you can just rely on that special energy. Even when up against the likes of heavy Enhanced Hammers, you can still hit for decent damage and just keep reattaching the energy until they run out with hammers. The blend are there to cover Kyurem and Thundurus, Prisms are there for everyone, and the Plasmas are there for acceleration and for the use of bonus effects on attackers. It all slots in nicely. And that is your skeleton list all laid out for you, and as usual we have a very tight list to try and fit in extra cards. There is a total of just one free space in the list, but if you jiggle some stuff around you could find some more, and here are a few suggestions for you to try out. The first thing I would suggest is looking for one more attacker, and the two that come to mind straight away are Lugia EX and Snorlax, both attackers that can essentially be your finishing attackers as they hit for huge amounts of damage and are both plasma Pokemon. Both of these attackers actually benefit quite well from having Scramble Switch in the deck, as they both hit for big damage but require large energy costs. Lugia EX is great for grabbing more prizes thanks to its ability, and can finish off those games when you have 3 prizes left rather than the desired number. I can see that this is especially useful in the mirror when Kyurem is concerned, as you can take 2 prizes off of it instead of the 1 and keep the prize trade in your favour still. Snorlax, however, is just a straight up beat stick that goes in guns a-blazing and takes out whatever is in its path. The attack cost is very steep at 5 energy, but again Scramble Switch can help you out there, and you can max this out at a base of 150 with a full plasma bench, not including Deoxys damage or lasers either. Both are great additions, but if you include any of these I would highly suggest putting in a couple double colourless so that you can launch their attacks a little easier. This also offers up an alternative to get Deoxys out of the active position and make life a little bit easier for you. Other attacking options can really be any other plasma Pokemon that deals heavy damage for low cost. Another example is Absol, as it can run off the Prism in the list, and it can hit really hard when paired with Deoxys. It can also catch the opponent off guard, especially in the mirror when benches are full of Deoxys already. As for other options, if you don't want to squeeze in another attacker, Floatstone is another great card given to us in Plasma Freeze that gives your Pokemon free retreat whenever it's attached. This will be great for attaching to just one of your Pokemon to give you more options throughout a turn, and also gives you another retreating option to keep you as versatile as possible when combined with the Force Switch. Other than that, the build is really what you make it. What I do really like about the deck is that there are a few little tweaks you can make in attackers and trainer lineups that can either make or break certain matchups, and it makes it really fun to both play and build. But overall, the deck is extremely versatile, has a large array of attackers at its disposal, and has close matchups across the board. And that is pretty much your Thundurus Deoxys or Plasma deck all mapped out for you. The list here is very tight, but a few adjustments will give you that room you need to make it your own. Be prepared for this deck whatever you're playing for Nationals, and I wouldn't be surprised if this very deck was sitting at most of the top tables. It's far from unbeatable, but it sure is the closest deck we have to having 50-50 matchups or better across the board. So that is going to be it from me this week, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If this video did help you out at all, then a like would be greatly appreciated, and if you happen to be new to the channel, then it would be awesome if you could subscribe for more Pokemon videos. Other than that, that's it from me, and I'll see you all next time. Have a great week.